All right, everyone. Thank you for joining this month's Kevin Check-in. If you guys haven't been on this webinar before, it'll work just as kind of an open forum. You'll be off mute unless you want to be on mute. And if you have any questions as I go through some of the updates, feel free to shout them out, and I'll try and give some more information about what we're talking through. The first thing we're going to talk about is just a couple minor enhancements that we've made to the API recently. We'll go ahead and get started just with our sales history detail call. If any of you are familiar, this is the API call where we're going to show 10 years of transaction history for any property that you're searching. We just made a quick update that now shows all of the sales history in order of the most recent sale to the oldest sale by default. So if you're looking to grab the most recent sale, you don't have to worry about doing any sorting or anything like that. It will show up with the most recent first. Moving on, the hierarchy call. So some of you may be familiar with our area hierarchy API call, and the thing we've added is actually a filter that allows it to be more efficient. If any of you have used it right now, what you do is you plug in a latitude and a longitude, and all of the boundaries that that point falls within will be returned. To make things a little more efficient, we've now added a filter for geotype. So if you wanted to only see zip codes coming back, or you only wanted to see school boundaries coming back, you could go ahead and add the geotype filter onto this call to make things a little faster and avoid having to search through all of the results. Just a way to make your life a little easier when searching for areas. The next thing I wanted to talk about is not necessarily a new feature, but it's a feature that I've gotten a lot of questions about recently, and people have wanted to be able to search and filter by multiple different things like property type. If you're making say a sale snapshot call in this case, and you want to return all of the properties in a 5-mile radius from a current property, and you only want to see single family residents and condos come back in that search, we do give you the ability to filter by more than one property type at a time. That's all through pipe delimited text. So if you see here in this sample call, we did a sale snapshot and then searched by the property type being single family residence and condominium. So it's just a good way to make your API calls a little more efficient if you want to pull back different kinds of property types within the same call. This works for any of our filters that are not a single value filter. Just a good way to make your life, again, a little more efficient. So those are some of the most recent API call changes. The next thing I wanted to show all of you is the updated metrics dashboard that we've added to the developer portal. So if some of you are familiar, when you wanted to look at metrics of your API usage in the past, the graph functionality was a little limited. So we've made some updates here that'll allow you to view your usage by 24 hours, 7 days, 30 days, 12 months, or you can select specific days to view. And what it'll do is show you the total hits. And if you scroll down, you're going to see the breakdown of those API calls and when they were made and how many you've made throughout that time frame. It's just a good way to keep track of your usage, make sure that your hits are all successful and that you're not making more calls than you need to. A good way to do some troubleshooting and see if you've got bugs in your software as well. So just a little update there to make life easier. One of the other things that I wanted to point out that I've gotten a lot of questions about recently is the debug equals true filter. So what this will do is, normally if we have a null value returned for a data field, that data field won't be shown in your API response. If you're interested in seeing all of the fields that are returned by the API, regardless of whether or not they're null, you could just go ahead and add debug equals true to the end of your request. And you'll see here that will show you that field and the fact that it's null. This is just a good way to make sure that when you're building out your functionality, you're taking all of the data fields into account, even if the example that you are using actually has some null values included in it. The last thing that I wanted to point out to everyone is the fact that we do offer lookup tables. So some of you may be familiar with using some of the lookup tables that we've shown, but if you're not using the area hierarchy call or the GeoID lookup call to pull back your GeoID information, if you'd rather have a list of, say, city names and how those relate to certain zip codes that you're focused on, we do offer our customers a lookup table in CSV format. So it would look something like this, just a pipe delimited CSV, where you could use this to allow your customers to search by city, maybe its neighborhood name, and you're trying to connect it to a GeoID in our system to search other data such as points of interest or community demographic data. This is just a good way for you avoiding an additional API call and still get the GeoID information that you need to pull back other data. It's also really helpful if you're implementing some kind of your own autofill functionality at a city level, maybe, where you want your users to be able to type in a city level, and instead of using maybe a Google autofill, you wanted to implement your own based on a lookup table. Really just an easier way for you to connect the name of a boundary with the actual boundary ID to be able to search the Onboard API. So those are just a few quick updates and some of the changes we've been making to try and make all of your lives a little easier. Any questions about those? Let's see, from Peter. Can you show that lookup table in action on the screen? So I don't actually, Peter, have this hooked up to anything, but the way that you would implement it is if you wanted to maybe give your customers the ability to look up a city. That would be something that would be equivalent to the place name here. So if they were going to look up Holtzville, then what you'd be able to do is connect Holtzville to the GeoID for, let's see, for this county, for example. So if you wanted to do a county search with the data, but allow your users to search by different names, it's really just a way for you to pull back those GeoIDs. Maybe the most relevant one we see is where people will take a zip code, a place name, and the place name GeoIDs. Since they're not necessarily intuitive, it'll be PL12345, for example. You can search our data with that PL code by looking up the place name in the lookup table. It would require a little development on your side, but happy to talk to you about it more offline if you wanted to reach out. Thank you guys all for joining. If any of you have questions on some of the new updates, feel free to reach out. We'll send out an email with some of the updates and new changes that we've made for you to take a look at. And then tune in next time. We'll be talking a little about the assessment, tax assessment history information that we're going to add, as well as some AVM data in our all events call and the ability to search by school. So some new things for next time. Hope you can all join, and thanks for hopping on today. We'll talk to you soon.